Hello, back with another deck tech. This week we got a deck I'm calling Blackgarden because of Oona's Blackguard here. And there's a light garden theme in that there's a bunch of snakes, and you usually find snakes in a garden. And there's fungus, insects. I'm growing things. There's all sorts of insects and stuff. Yeah, so kind of works. Never mind all the robots. Yeah. You don't usually find robots in a garden.
I mean, maybe you do.
Scarebot? Scarebros? I don't know. But, yeah, so that's what this deck is. It's essentially a black-green counters deck with Hardened Scales, Winding Constrictor, of course. But it is not the super powerful one because I wanted to play these cards. They have nice art, and I like them. So that is why they're not much better artifact versions of them.
Rakdos Cackler, definitely the weirdest ones of them.
Oh, yeah. But that is nice promo art.
It is very nice promo art.
And I don't know when else I'll ever get a chance to use him. So, start going over the deck here. We have Hardened Scales and Winding Constrictor. These are essentially kind of the same card. Hardened Scales, when a +1/+1 counter would be placed on a creature, you place that many +1 instead. Winding Constrictor, same thing, but it's on a 2/3 body. And this card is very interesting. Secret Lair added some very strange things.
That is, yeah.
It's a pink snake with a very non-magic-like art on it. So then we got some of the things that capitalize off of this. So we have Swarm Shambler. It comes in with a counter itself. And whenever a creature with a counter becomes a target of a spell, he spits out a bunch of insects. And you can tap one and himself to grow himself. Which
yes, does combine with those to grow more than just one +1/+1.
Mm-hmm. Which you will see in this row quite a bit. But yeah, pretty cool. It's neat that he offers you a little. It's not so much protecting your other creatures, but it is disincentivizing removing them with a removal spell. So that's
or at least giving you some value.
Yeah. Then we got Rakdos Cackler. Yeah, probably the weakest in this deck by far, because at best it's like just a big guy that can't block.
The 1/2 punch though would be good if you got it.
Yeah. So you can cackle on turn 1, even if you don't have a Hardened Scales or a Constrictor, and then turn 2, play a Blackguard, and then attack with the Cackler and get the Blackguard trigger. Of course, the Unleash also works with these doubling effects, so if you have a bunch of these in play, it's just a big dude for one. But most importantly, promo art. So we got Oona's Blackguard up next, the namesake of the deck. It is a 1/1 flyer for 2. Each other rogue enters with a +1/+1 counter. Don't have any other rogues, but its second ability is what's really important, where a creature with a +1/+1 counter deals, is it combat damage or just damage?
Deals combat
damage. To a player, then that player discards a card.
Instant combat damage, Walking Ballista.
Oh yeah,
much better.
Huge. Basically, it turns all your things into a little bit of an extra threat. And of course, Blackguard itself is a fairy rogue, so when you play your second one, the first one will make the second one enter with a counter. I'm going to skip a little bit too, but Llanowar Reborn also very handy because you can graft a counter onto the first one that you play, turning it into its own sort of threat.
Its own sort of remove. Yes.
Yeah, and it flies also. So it's nice if your opponent doesn't have any flying blockers, then you can kind of just chip in for discards and small amounts of damage easily in the air. And then at the end there, we got a Stonecoil Serpent. It costs X. Comes in with X +1/+1 counters, essentially. And it has Reach, Trample, and Protection from Multicolored. Just a giant dude. But the Trample is actually very nice.
The Trample is disgusting on a deck that grows counters and can use Modular to move them over, so yes.
Yeah, pretty good.
The Reach is,
it's something.
Disincentivizes some attacks, so it does have use.
Yeah, of all the X casting cost spells that add counters, I figure this is probably one of the better ones. Up here, I probably should have went over this one earlier, but we have the Ozolith. So this essentially gives a modular trigger to everything, more or less. So when something dies, if it had counters on it, the counters go onto the Ozolith, and then at the beginning of combat, you can move all the counters that are on an Ozolith onto another creature.
Yes.
So just sort of like a
I don't believe the creature
storage
has
facility.
To attack to get that trigger. It's
No.
Move to combat can move counters. So.
Mm-hmm. So you can also just like load up a blocker basically if you need to.
And it's just a way to like battery your +1/+1 counters as well.
Yeah.
Because it's whenever it just leaves, so even if they path it, your big attacker, they get on the Ozolith until you have another creature. So
yeah.
it doesn't remove the threat permanently, which is nice.
Yeah, very. And of course, there's always shenanigans with Hardened Scales and Constrictor in that, you place the counters on the Ozolith, and then when they move from the Ozolith to something else, if you have these in play, it actually moves more.
You get a little bit more. It does not work when they move to the Ozolith because they specify when it's a creature.
This one actually would, because it's artifact or creature.
Nice.
Next we have Zabaz, the Glimmerwasp. It's essentially just another similar thing to this, where it's a 1-mana thing that comes in with a counter, and if a modular triggered ability would put one or more counters on something, you get an extra one. So it also sort of doubles as a limited version of these effects, specifically just for this guy, Arcbound Ravager. All-star in the deck, of course. And he has some other abilities too, but not really using it for those.
He's not at his full potential in this deck.
Yeah. But he's a modular guy, and of all the 1-drop modular guys, he does some things, so figured it'd be a little bit better. Very possible I should have a white source in here, just in case I need to give him flying, though. Food for thought. But anyway, Arcbound Ravager, huge card in this deck, so we should all know what this does at this point, but you sacrifice an artifact to put +1/+1 counter on the Ravager, and he has modular 1 himself, so he enters with a +1/+1 counter, and you can do all sorts of really busted things, but essentially this card lets you turn anything that is an artifact into a 1-hit kill threat, potentially. So really something to watch out for, because you can just...
instant speed, which is what always makes it annoying.
Yeah.
Because whatever doesn't get blocked can become your main damage.
Yeah. And especially good with the card next to it here. So this is actually Hangarback Walker, but this is a Godzilla variant of Hangarback Walker. Mecha Godzilla Battle Fortress, which is a little extra for what Hangarback Walker does, to be honest. But it costs XX, it's a 0/0, enters with X counters, as per all of these things. But when it dies, its counters turn into 1/1 Thopter tokens. And you can pay 1 and tap it to grow itself, similar to the Swarm Shambler. So with one of these guys or more of these guys in play, absolutely busted. You tap 1, tap him, put maybe 3 counters on it. And with an Arcbound Ravager in play, at any point, if removal gets pointed at him, you can sack him, probably turn the 6 counters into 6 1/1s, and then sack all the 1/1s to turn them into more counters. And if you have some of these in play, each time you do that, it doubles or triples or
gets out of hand.
Yeah, pretty nuts. So these 2 cards can win a game pretty much just on their own. And Walking Ballista also. So most versions of this deck you would want to max out on your ballistas because it can just be an instant kill with a Ravager and some other stuff. But I didn't go all the way in on the artifact version of this deck because we're running all these other cards as well. So I didn't really want to do that. I would have to have a lot more artifacts, and we frankly only have 1 of this Transformer variant of Walking Ballista, so...
And you have all the nice stuff.
Full have to match the theme. But Walking Ballista, of course, XX comes in with X counters, and then you can remove a counter to shoot something or somebody for 1, and you can pay 4 to add an additional counter to the Walking Ballista. So similar to the Mecha Godzilla with the Arcbound Ravager in play, or a lot of these different effects. Absolutely busted. You can put a ton of counters on him and just win the game, or clear the board
straight into direct damage.
Yeah, pretty scary stuff. So then for lands, we got 3 forests, 3 swamps, 2 Blooming Marsh, 4 Overgrown Tomb. I'm gonna skip this for now. 3 Verdant Catacombs, 2 Llanowar Reborn. Yeah, Woodland Cemetery. Llanowar Reborn is that card that I mentioned earlier with Graft, so it has a +1/+1 counter to give something. And then we got 4 Inkmoth Nexus, so this is in there for the surprise win with infect damage. So if your opponent is somehow gaining a bunch of life, you can kind of just ignore that. If your opponent doesn't have flying blockers, but they have the ground pretty locked up, a Ravager could just easily put 10 counters onto this. Or 9, I guess. And Inkmoth Nexus can basically just one-hit kill if you happen to catch your opponent with their pants down.
And it being a land creature means you need instant speed removal to deal with it.
Yes, that too. Very helpful. Yeah, so pretty good card in this deck. Also, with Ozolith, it's funny because you can basically just have this and this in play and play the game. And even if you're losing the game, as long as you get enough counters on this, you can probably come back. Which is pretty fun. So that is Blackgarden.